Namaste. Good morning. Today the subject is how to live a courageous life. Courage is a word that we're all familiar with, but I think it means different things to different people. I remember having a conversation with my sister some years ago. She has had chronic physical problems her whole life, and which caused her to have debilitating headaches. And she was telling me, kind of reviewing her life and thinking what a waste her life had been, that she hadn't accomplished anything because of these headaches. She had not been able to go out and get a job and accomplish things the way that she, in her mind, thought that you were supposed to accomplish things in life. And I had to stop myself from laughing, because laughing wouldn't have been the appropriate response, because she was being very serious. But at the same time, I said, you don't even have any idea what your life looks like from this side of the fence. You see these things that you failed in. What I see is that all of this incredible challenge that you've had, and in spite of that, you have done the things that you've done. And there was a list of things that she had done. She raised a son, and she was an artist and had done quite a bit of art. And she was into landscaping, and she'd done tons of landscaping. And I mean, it wasn't money-making, but it was productive. But then when you think about the life, what makes a productive life? You think about, well, at the end of life, when you look back, you say, well, what did I do? What was worth doing? What do I feel like I accomplished in this lifetime? It's not how much money you made. It's the qualities of energy that flow through your consciousness. And it doesn't really matter what you do in life. You will come against a challenge that is for you difficult, that might be easy for someone else. I mean, we always try, we make comparisons about life when they're totally inappropriate. If you think about people with life challenges, how many of you heard of Helen Keller? Yes? Okay, half of you. Helen Keller was born blind. She couldn't hear. She couldn't speak. Now, I would say that's a challenging situation. And she was, hard to say whether she was angry or frustrated, but she was hard to communicate, to do anything with, because of this difficulty. She became a world-renowned motivational speaker. Inspired many, many people. In order for her to accomplish what she did, she had to have courage. We think that our life is, well, compared to her, we have it easy. But compared to some other people, we have it difficult. We can always recognize that it's very unlikely that you have the most challenging life or the least challenging life. You're going to be in the middle somewhere in there. But the mechanism, the way that we approach our lives, no matter whether we're at one extreme end or the other, it's the same. But we have in our minds that courage should only be applied to Mahatma Gandhi, who had courage to stand up in nonviolence against aggression. Well, he was, I mean, don't misunderstand me. he was a great soul, a great leader, but others have faced that challenge too. In America, in the 60s, we had what was called the Civil Rights Movement. Black people who had been slaves, even 100 years after slavery, they still had no rights. They, like Mahatma Gandhi, led a nonviolent revolution for rights, and many of them were beaten. It took incredible courage to do that. But you know, young people, when they go to the dentist for the first time, they don't know what kind of trouble they're getting into. But the second time they know, and they don't want to go. They have to have a certain amount of courage. And today, young people in India are under a huge amount of pressure scholastically, and even to the point where some commit suicide because of that pressure. It takes great courage to stand up against whatever it is that your life has presented to you. Yoganandaji said something that we should all remember. There is no such thing in life as an obstacle, only an opportunity. It all comes down to how we perceive it and what we do with it. Look, there's a lot of stuff in life that's scary, but isn't it interesting that sometimes we do really scary things for fun? Isn't it? We go to scary movies. We get on amusement rides that you can't even believe you're doing it. People jump out of airplanes for fun. It's scary. But that mechanism inside of us has a choice about what we do with that intensity of life experience. And it's important to recognize that it doesn't matter what is challenging you. Single mothers who lose the husband for whatever reason. Wow, that's scary, that's challenging. It takes courage. I remember as a young man, and young men are known for challenging themselves. And in a whole variety of ways, they climb mountains and they do all kinds of adventurous things. And of course now young women are doing those same things. I used to go surfing in the ocean. And at that time, if you wanted to ride the big waves, you went to Hawaii. And so I went to Hawaii to ride the biggest waves. They've now discovered that there's actually big waves in many places around the world. But at that time, Hawaii was, and is still, the main mecca of surfing. The thing is that I grew up in California, and the waves weren't that big most of the time. But they were still scary. Even, when you're only this tall, then a wave this big is big. But when you're this tall, then of course that smaller wave isn't such a big deal. But imagine lying down on the floor, you're on your surfboard, and a wave is coming at you, and you turn around and you look at it, and it's as tall as this building. And it's going to come crashing down because you can't catch the wave until it's just about to go over. You have to get it at that most critical point. And just as it's about to go over, you have to catch it and go riding down. And then it's chasing you. and if you fall, oh man, you think washing machines are bad. It's like the whole ocean is coming down on your head. And people die. People drown. People get thrown down into underwater caves. And they try to swim up. And they hit coral. And then they try to swim down and they hit coral, and now what do? And then they go, oh, I've heard about this. Underwater caves, let me see if I can find an opening. There's a young woman, I think her name is Bethany Hamilton. She grew up in Hawaii, and she is currently on the World Professional Surfing Tour. And she recently won her first world tour events. She was surfing in Hawaii one day, some years ago, and while she was out surfing, a shark bit her arm. The shark bit her arm off. It was gone. A big chunk of the surfboard. And they got her into the beach, and, you know, she survived. But I mean, imagine going out in the big wave I was talking about, you only have one arm. You know, and I mean, the most natural thing in the world is to say, it can't be done. It can't be done. You shouldn't even go out with two arms. To go out with one arm, it can't be done. She's now a world champion surfer. She's done it. There are so many things in life that we think it can't be done. And when we have that thought, it can't be done, that's when we have to find our courage and say, it can be done. And even if it can't be done, do we want to fail without even trying? How do we know it can't be done? Most of the time in life, it can be done. If nothing else, you can survive the biggest wave I ever rode. I caught the wave, and I got down to the bottom. I made this big turn, and I'm heading back up to the top. And so once you've gotten to the bottom and I successfully caught and rode a big wave. But now, I mean, it was coming down on me, and I wasn't going to make it. So I had to dive off the side, and then there was this big, huge explosion of water, and it took me about, 30 or 45 minutes to get to the beach, because the ocean was, in tumult from all the waves that kept coming. But when I got to the beach, I was so excited. I was excited that I had ridden the big wave to some degree, but I was even more excited. I survived. I survived a situation that I didn't know if I could survive. And this is the thing, is there's so much of course, this is one of the things that makes life interesting. If we knew, of course, I just realized that if we knew it was always going to be okay, then we wouldn't be bothered. But I'm actually saying that. I am saying, I'm going to get to the fact that if we really knew that it was always going to be okay, we would never be bothered. In other words, but the fact is, you still have to live through it. In the end, you get to that place where you have experienced enough challenge in life that you realize, if you allow yourself to, that you will survive it. And as many times as I went into the ocean, I did survive. But it's interesting, there was a time when I was surfing and my surfboard, after I fell off, my surfboard got swept out to sea. And we saw it with the binoculars. It was just floating away. And it floated near the coast at a certain point, but the waves were huge. They were breaking on the rocks. It was an extremely dangerous place to be. And there was a fellow who came up next to me and he said, "Hey, so I see your board is there. You gonna go get it?" I said, "No." I said, "No, I'm not gonna go get it." He says, "Well, if I go get it, can I have it?" And I looked at him, this guy was completely prepared to go into the ocean there and get it. And I felt like, I was like a coward or something, but I knew I wasn't going to do it. Even though I had been out in the waves somewhere else, I knew that this situation wasn't the right situation for me to go in. It would have been reckless for me to do this. And so I said, "No, I'm not going in, but no, you can't have my board." And interestingly enough, my friend and I, we followed my surfboard down the coast, And it went for almost 10 kilometers down the coast, and finally these waves way out to sea got caught by them, and it floated all the way almost to the beach. I had to go a little ways out to get it in a safe place. And this is one of the realities of the way that life works. If we build our ability to face that which is in front of us and become educated by it, become educated by the process of recognizing that we have inner capabilities that are far beyond that which we generally think of. But then we also have to recognize that there's points in life at times when we have to surrender. We have to say, okay, I surrender to the situation, and then I wait and hope for the best. And it takes a certain amount of inner trust and connectedness to begin to tell the difference. But the tipping point in life has to start with our willingness to see things for what they are. And it often takes a great amount of courage to honestly evaluate. It would have been easy for me to say, under the peer pressure of this fellow being so tough, and it's very funny, his nickname was Lunch Meat. And he was just that kind of guy. He was a little short, but he was just thick and tough, and nobody would mess with this guy. I mean, he was really like, and I can only believe that he would have survived it. I don't know. But I knew that in my honest evaluation of my capabilities at that time, I had to say it was not a good idea. Now, had there been somebody out there drowning, I might have felt differently. I might have said, well, I need to try to help this person, even at the cost of my life. Or I might have said, I would like to try to help this person, but maybe it's not a good idea for me to drown, as well. And those decisions in life can be extremely challenging. Usually, you don't have time to plan, and you spontaneously react. But there's much in life where we can develop inside of ourselves the ability to face things that we find personally challenging. And when I was surfing, I did that over a period of extended years. At first, even the smallest wave was scary. But gradually, I became comfortable with that. And then bigger and bigger and bigger. And I didn't ride the biggest waves ever ridden. Now they're riding waves that are over twice as big as the biggest wave I ever rode. Those guys are crazy. I mean, nobody thought you could do that then. Nobody even dreamed that you could ride waves, or even that there were waves that big to ride. Life continues to challenge in ways that we don't always anticipate. So each of us has this thing in our life, these opportunities that we call challenges, that we call stumbling blocks, fears, obstructions, whatever we want to call them. What they really are is opportunities to develop courage. There's a great story about one of the brothers at Mount Washington, Master's Ashram in America, and he, before he came to the ashram as a young man, he was a mountain climber in Europe. I forget exactly where he was, and he had done a number of mountain climbing. They do different routes. One mountain, if you climb it one way, it might be easy to get to the top. But if you climb it a different way, then it can be very difficult. And he had done a number of what they call first ascents. First time that anybody had climbed the route that he took. And so he went up one day by himself, and he went to climb this one route, and he got to a certain point where he didn't realize this was going to be the case when he got up there, where the mountain, instead of continuing to go up in a slope, it came out over itself. So in order to go up, you literally had to go upside down and then around. And he was on this little ledge underneath, and then he would try to climb up, but then he'd fall down on the ledge. Fortunately, he had a ledge to fall down onto, but he kept trying, but he couldn't get up. And he couldn't go down. He had to go up, or he was going to die. And so he kept trying. And there was a certain point that he described where he realized that there was a good chance that he wasn't going to make it, that he might die. But he decided in his mind, he says, it's better to die trying than to just give up. And so he kept trying, and he kept trying, and he kept trying. He said that about the, I don't remember what the number was, 15 or 20 times that he tried, 30 times. And of course he kept getting weaker. But nevertheless, he kept trying, and at one point, he said that he started to get to that point, that place where he would fall, and he actually felt a force push up against him. And that force kept him connected to the mountain enough that he could then climb up and become the disciple of a great master. So clearly, of course, we look at that and we go, wow, he had the karma and the blessing. But do you think that it was only he that has special blessing? Is he the only one that God is paying attention to help in what we would describe as dire circumstances, life-threatening circumstances? The reality is that God is present with each and every one of us all the time. But this disciple had the choice to open himself up to the possibility of success, even though that success was incredibly difficult, even seemingly impossible. But he opened himself up to, he says, I will not give up. And through that commitment, the impossible happened. The reality is, if you look at life, we find that most people get through their greatest challenges, in spite of their fears, in spite of whether they give up or not. Most of the time they survive, not always. Of course, we know the soul always survives, so it just means that they reset and have to come back and continue. But even from the framework of what we call, life in the physical plane, most of the time it works out. Most of the time things, one way or another, they resolve themselves. But we put ourselves through an immense amount of discomfort because of the way that we react to challenging circumstances. There was a certain point at which I learned that the fear of catching the wave was in me. That was my problem. It wasn't the wave. The wave wasn't causing the problem. And since I was going to try to catch the wave, even if I was afraid, I might as well give up this fear. The reality is that you can't give it up completely. These fellows who ride the biggest waves in the world today, they are afraid all the time. But they've learned to manage that fear. That we call courage. Many people think that that people who are quote-unquote heroes or people who manifest great courage aren't afraid. No, but they manage that fear. They manage that fear. And the way that they do it is one of the basic principles that we follow in the spiritual life. We create a greater flow of energy in the direction that we seek than the direction of that which we don't seek. So instead of pushing against and rejecting fear, we switch our attention towards the positive. We awaken our energy towards positive determination, towards connectedness to spirit, to openness to God's will in any given circumstance, to the recognition that this challenge is God's gift to us. This is one of the greatest challenges in life, to recognize that the biggest test in your life is not punishment, it's a gift. It's the gift of an opportunity to rise to a whole new level. Kriyanandaji often said that the greatest challenge in his life was when he was kicked out of Self-Realization Fellowship. And it took him some years to recover from this. You know, it would be my personal opinion that to the extent that he was challenged by anything in later in his life, this was his greatest challenge. It was the one that caused him the greatest suffering in his life. But he wrote to the great saint Nanmoy Ma once and explained what had happened. And her response was, Guru's grace. You have to see this as your Guru's grace. And when he first read that from her, he just, oh man, I can't digest that. I can't accept that. I can't see how this could be Guru's grace. And yet we are here today because of that grace. Each and every one of us. And he did get through it. And he did embrace it. And he did, and this is one of the things that inspired me most about Swami Kriyananda's life, was his courage to face each and every day and the challenges that were there with this sense of, not that he always knew the answers, not that it wasn't a challenge, but he was just always, positive, energetic, and enthusiastic. We do this exercise, positive, energetic, and enthusiastic. But he was always like that. He wasn't like hyper, I'm excited on the outside. But you always felt this positive, energetic enthusiasm in a very calm but very powerful way. And he courageously faced many, many different kinds of challenges in his life. And each and every one of us, we all have challenges. We don't need to grade them and say, my challenge is greater than yours, or my challenge is less than yours. We are given the grace of the challenges that are ours. If it's on your plate, if it's in your life, it's yours. But then, yes, introspection might help you to understand how this came into your life. You might be able to see some of the reasons, but you might not. You can't see into previous incarnations what energies had caused some of these things to come into our lives. And in the end, a lot of the time, it really doesn't matter that much. The most important thing is to receive it with the right consciousness. To stand up and say, I accept what God has given me, and now I'm going to use my God-given abilities to face it with courage, with grace, with even, if you can, in the end, appreciation. For what we become when we have faced our life challenges is a better person, a better soul, closer to God. These are all gifts that are given to us if we can work with that inner awareness, if we can be honest and then open to greater potentials than what we had been previously. Courage is not just for running into a burning house and saving people. Courage is for each and everything that challenges us. So don't let your a smaller view of yourself limit your ability to face your challenges. Don't say, I can't. Say, say, with God's grace, I will accomplish what is given to me to accomplish. The basic guideline that we practice as yogis is Yatta Dharma Tata Jaya. Where there is Dharma, there is victory. Where we act in harmony with the highest truth that we can understand, in not only in act, but in thought, then it's better to fail at our Dharma than to succeed in that which is not our Dharma. The more we attune to spirit, the more we understand about what it is that we should be doing in any given situation. Sometimes you have to stand up for others. Sometimes you have to let nature take its course. And each and every life circumstance is different. Like when the surfboard was going by, should I try to save it? Should I let it go and hope for the best? And if it had been a person, would I have acted differently? You know, each life experience has its own truth. Our goal is to attune to that truth and to act according to our highest understanding within the framework of what we are given to do. And there would have been times that it would have been the right thing to dive in and drown, because it would have been more dharmic to try than to stand back and not. Fortunately, that challenge wasn't given to me, so I don't know the answer to that one. But each and every one of us is given the ability to survive Dharma. Whether we stay in this physical realm or not is not the issue of survival, but the issue of, can we stand up to Dharma? Can we stand up to the truth that is given to us, the best truth that we can? Have the courage to live that way. Have the courage to say, when society says, you need a bigger car, you need to go along with everybody else, have the ability to say, no, I need to stay simple. When society says you should be worldly, you should be angry, you should be emotional and restless, you have to be able to stand and say, no, if you want to live that way, fine, but I choose not to. I was speaking with a relative recently, and she said something to me that was, in the moment, it was a little surprising to me. She said, well, as you get older, you worry more. And you have more angst. You have more ill feelings about what can go wrong in life. Presumably she was saying this because you get older and you understand more about what can go wrong. But it made me laugh. I said, oh, that may be your experience. But my experience is that the older I get, the less I worry about anything. I don't feel any of that stuff. And this is the key, is that if we accept that worldly view of life, which is that it's supposed to be bothersome, that the ups and downs of life, you're supposed to, embrace that, then that's what we end up with. But the yogi says you can be calmly active and actively calm. You can live in peace, in well-being, regardless of the storm outside of yourself. That's why Master said that through the practice of Kriya Yoga, you can stand unshaken amidst crashing worlds. So ultimately, courage leads to transcendence of fear. You grow past all of these fears that we've grown up, we grow past them. Not because we're pushing them away, but because we're experiencing a reality of well-being in which fear does not penetrate. Which those emotional concerns that we're used to no longer penetrate into our consciousness. I'd like to finish by reading something that Yoganandaji wrote. He wrote, "Walk with courage. Go forward from day to day with calm inner faith. Eventually, you will pass beyond every shadow of bad karma, beyond all tests and difficulties, and will behold at last the dawn of divine fulfillment. In that highest of all states of consciousness will come freedom from every last trailing vapor of misfortune.